Hello, and welcome to the 15th session of our Water Life series. This one is on how social entrepreneurship can amplify the impact of on-the-ground efforts. For example, improving farmer-to-market linkages, enhancing skill development, and also providing economic benefit to farmers. My name is Manu Nambudri, and I'm here to welcome you to today's session on behalf of the entire OVBI community of volunteers and partners. We are very excited to have a wonderful conversation between Arun Nagpal, the founder of a social entrepreneurship company called Mrida, and V.V. Jagdish, co-chairman of OVBI Water. Before I introduce Arun and V.V.G., let's quickly watch a video that shows the kind of impact that Mrida is having in rural Indian villages.
मृदा कंपनी के द्वारा बहुत से योजनाएं लाए जो हमारे स्वरोजगार में भी काम किया जा रहा है।
सप्लाई पानी पीने के लिए मिल रहा है और जैसे भी सोलर लाइट लगा, वो सिलाई मशीन सिखाया जा रहा है और हर महिलाओं को मैं चाहती हूँ कि वो आगे बढ़े और खूब तरक्की करे। कौन ऐसा काम है जो जेंट्स कर सकते हैं, लेडीज नहीं कर सकती।
गांव में काम कर रहे हैं बाजोडी और झन्नामुड़ी में, दोनों महिलाएं ही लीड कर रही है इस समिति को। और महिलाएं इसमें अकाउंट बुक कीपिंग का रिकॉर्ड करना, मीटिंग रजिस्टर मेंटेन करना और कंट्रीब्यूशन जो है मनी का डिपॉजिट करना, ये सारे रोल महिलाएं ही निभा रही है।
तो बोलना भी नहीं आता था, वो धीरे धीरे बोलना भी सीख रही है। समूह में जाकर बैठक होते हैं, बातों का चर्चा भी वहाँ होता है, तो सबको मतलब बोलने का मौका होता है वहाँ पे, वो जो कि ये घर में वैसा नहीं बोल पाती थी।
इस समिति के द्वारा मैं सिलाई का प्रशिक्षण ले चुकी हूँ और मैं चाहती हूँ आगे कि मैं सिलाई अपना यानी सेंटर खोल सकूँ, उसमें काम कर सकूँ और लोगों को सिखला सकूँ और चाहती हूँ मैं खुद ही अपना एक बिजनेस कर सकूँ।
अच्छा पानी क्या है, खराब पानी क्या है, वो तो किसी को जानकारी नहीं था। देहात में जो होता था कुआं में खींचता था, पानी पी लेता था, या तो चापाकल से निकालता था, पी लेता था। अभी फिल्टर का पानी लगा दिए हैं तो स्वास्थ्य आ ही गई।
स्वास्थ्य के लिए आपकी कंपनी की भी थी प्रयास, डॉक्टर की पूरी टीम आई थी, बच्चों का सब जांच किया गया था, वजन से लेकर उनका ब्लड सैंपल वगैरह लिया गया था। जांच से पता चलता है ना कि इसमें क्या और सुधार होना चाहिए।
यहाँ पे जो आइनर्स वाले आए थे उनको हमने बोला कि अगर आप पानी का व्यवस्था यहाँ पे हमारी कर देते हो तो हम यहाँ पे खेती आधुनिक तरीके से कर सकते हैं। हमने सोचा है बिटर गार्ड करेले की खेती हम पहली बार करना चाहेंगे यहाँ पे।
अपना पैसा से बिजनेस किए हैं और बिजनेस को बढ़ाना है। अभी महीना में 300-400 पैकेट सेल कर लेते हैं दर्जन, और बिजनेस को हम बढ़ाना चाहते हैं, जहाँ तक पहुँच न सकें। और मशीन भी खरीदना चाहते हैं।
एक आपका सुविधा दिया गया है जो हम लोग के पैसा के लेन देन के लिए हम लोग का मतलब बैंक जाना पड़ता था, कारा बैंक दूर पड़ता था, मतलब समय में अगर जरूरत होता तो उनको बैंक जाना पड़ता था, तो वो सुविधा हम लोग के समिति के माध्यम से गांव में ही मिल गया।
सोलर लाइट हम लोग के दरवाजे में, हर गली में, हर मोहल्ले में लग गया। हम लोग रात अंधेरे में जब भी निकलते तो डर नहीं लगता, भय नहीं लगता है, और घर से बाहर निकल भी सकते हैं रात में। हमारे बच्चे जो है कभी मान लीजिए गर्मी लग गया तो बाहर भी निकाल के घुमा सकते हैं, तो लाइट की वजह से।
हम चाह रहे हैं कि हमारे ग्राम में इस तरह सुविधा हो कि गांव के लोग बाहर खटने ना जाए, अपने खेती बाड़ी पर ही जीवन जीविका चलाएं। कंपनी इसी तरह हमको सहयोग करें और नया दिशा भी दें। इसके लिए हम मृदा कंपनी का शुक्रगुजार रहूँगा।
Wonderful. Let me quickly introduce both Arun and BVG before I hand over the session to BVG to facilitate today's conversation. So Arun Nagpal is an engineer and MBA in marketing and finance and has over 30 years of diverse business experience covering a range of industries and functional areas in progressively senior roles, including over 10 years at the COO and board levels. Always passionate about social issues, Arun turned to social entrepreneurship in 2014, co-founding Mrida, which is actually Sanskrit for soil, a social business venture aimed at facilitating sustainable and scalable holistic rural development and uplifting the lives of underserved individuals and communities at the bottom of the pyramid. Mrida's interventions in remote rural areas include energy access, education, health and nutrition, skill development, livelihoods, women's empowerment, and agriculture. Through its consumer brand Earthspire, Mrida also provides market linkages for small and marginal farmers and village folk. Earthspire and Mrida are today taught as a case study at INSEAD under the topic Building a Brand for Social Impact. Since its conception, Mrida has initiated interventions in 42 villages across 9 states, impacting over 22,000 lives. Figures that Arun and his team are now aggressively attempting to scale up in India as well as overseas. Welcome, Arunji.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Now let me welcome and introduce B.V. Jagdish, co-chairman of OVBI Water as well. B.V. Jagdish is a managing partner at Kaj Ventures. He has successfully invested and guided several highly successful companies such as Nutanix, Yodlee, Arkin, just to name a few. Before founding Kaj, B.V. Jagdish served as the founding investor and CEO of Netscaler. Prior to Netscaler, he co-founded and served as CTO of Exodus Communications in 1993 that pioneered the concept of internet data centers. He was instrumental in the successful IPO of Exodus in 1998. Currently, Jagdish is an active investor and serves on the board of several Silicon Valley startups. He's also an adjunct faculty at the Levy School of Business, SCU. Along with his enthusiastic involvement with OVBI, Jagdish is also very actively involved with several other nonprofits for the betterment of the world, such as the UVCE Foundation, which provides scholarships for higher education students, OSAT, which is one school at a time that constructs school buildings for the underprivileged, Akshaya Patra, that provides midday meals to over 1.8 million children every day, as well as the Shankara Cancer Hospital in Bangalore. I now invite B.V. Jagdish ji to kick off this fascinating conversation with Arunji.
Manu, thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. Arun, it's such a pleasure and an honor to have you here with us today.
Likewise, Jagdish, it's a privilege from my side to be here and sharing this conversation with you. Thank you.
Absolutely. I know it's already like 10:30 p.m. for you in Delhi. And it's really nice of you for taking the time to be with us and sharing your experiences with our audience, who's very passionate about how water-related issues are solved. And that's one of the biggest problems that we are working on at OVBI, to eliminate the water poverty by 2030. And you and I go back almost like 4 years. So it was just a incidental kind of a meeting, a coffee meeting that led to an amazing friendship. And as you were showing the video that I was watching, it brought back a lot of memories of multiple trips that you and I have made to Bareilly and various other places in Uttar Pradesh.
That's right.
And personally, I've seen the impact that you have created to hundreds and thousands of people all over. And you have now further expanded that into Manipur, into Gujarat, and many other places that you have as a vision. It's really, I have to say, you are one of the very unique kind of personalities and entrepreneurs, a social entrepreneur. And I think it'll be very inspiring to actually hear your journey, given the fact that you have a phenomenal engineering degree from Pune College of Engineering. And then after that, the most prestigious management degree from IIM Calcutta. And then you were a corporate exec for many, many years. And suddenly, there was this calling for you. And it's fascinating to see how you have transitioned from a corporate exec and bringing all that experience, knowledge, connections, and all of that into this whole social entrepreneurship. So share us your journey a little bit. I'm pretty sure many of us would be very inspired with your story.
Thank you very much, Jagdish. I think you're being over generous as always, but anyway, one is just trying to do one's little bit, as we go along. So, to answer your question, let me just take you a little bit of background as to, why this whole idea of rural development, how did one get into the development sector from the corporate world, and then specifically this whole idea of social entrepreneurship. It's a fairly long answer, but I'll try and, split it into three parts. So, to take you back, as you mentioned, I grew up in a place called Pune in Maharashtra. And my father was a horticulturist, and he was employed by the government of Maharashtra and the agriculture department. So one of my earliest memories as a child is actually traveling with my dad to some of the remotest corners of Maharashtra, spending time in the villages there, spending some time with the farmers, etc. And so somewhere or the other, that's something that has always been there at the back of my mind. Now, Dad passed away about 6 years ago. He was 94. And right till the end, if there was something that he was really passionate about, it was about rural development. I mean, he was very, very convinced that if India has to develop, it has to start from the villages. It has to be a bottom-up approach to development. And development has to start from the villages and with the small and marginal farmers. So in many ways, that's so what one is trying to do between the team and myself at Mrida is essentially, I mean, from my point of view, it's actually taking forward my father's legacy. So that was how the whole idea of, the rural development or working in the villages basically came about. Now coming to the development sector, as you said, I grew up in Pune, did my schooling there, did my mechanical engineering from College of Engineering, Pune, and then passed out from the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta in 1985 with a major in marketing and finance. And after that, I spent about 30 years in the corporate world, across industries, different functional areas, different parts of India. And one had a reasonably good stint in the corporate world. So I kind of moved into leadership roles somewhere, around the age of about 36, 38. And then after that, I spent about 10 years, in leadership roles at the CEO, at the COO, at the board levels, etc. So I did reasonably well for myself. Now, if I look back, and if I'm being generous to myself, I would say maybe 30, 35% at most would be something that I could attribute to myself, whatever, my hard work, intelligence, etc., etc. But I would say by and large, a significant chunk of what I was actually because I was fortunate enough to have the kind of ecosystem that allowed me to rise to the limits of my desire and ability. So whether it was the upbringing and the value systems that one imbibed from one's parents, whether it was teachers at school, professors at college, people I had the privilege to work with, whether it was my seniors, my colleagues, team members, etc. I think all that actually went into making me what I was and to kind of establishing me on the kind of solid platform that I was fortunate enough to build. So somewhere, it was always very clear to me that I should spend at least the last 10 to 15 years of my active career, not once I've retired, but the last 10 to 15 years of my active working life should be spent trying to create exactly the same kind of ecosystem for others who may not have been as fortunate as I was. So I told you about the, the rural development part, and this was, the calling for getting into the development sector. So the idea was, get into the development sector. Now let's come to the social entrepreneurship part. Something that I've been somehow very clear about is that, what one has, what one has learned in the corporate world, can one bring in the same rigor and the financial, the rigor of the corporate world into the development sector? Because something that I've always felt is that development need not necessarily be only donation or philanthropy or grant. That can work up to a certain point, but if development really wants to, if we really want to make development both sustainable as well as scalable, there has to be what I call as the corporate side of development, right? So the thought process between, we were three co-founders, ex-colleagues and friends who kind of got together to set up Mrida as a social enterprise. So the whole idea was, how can we leverage whatever one has learned in the corporate world and bring, as I said, the same rigor of the financial discipline of the corporate world into the development sector. So that was really the motivation to get into the development sector. That was the motivation to, set up Mrida. Jagdish, you're on mute, I think.
Yes. Yeah. So if you see this picture of any entrepreneurship, right? At the end of the day, any entrepreneurship, you need three different things. You need a product, you need the capital, and you need the mentors, right? And being in the corporate world and moving into the social entrepreneurship, you have seen, first of all, I think it's a phenomenal transition, because many people who are in this corporate world and capitalism and all that, they're always continuously thinking about, how do I make more money? How do I buy my next house? Where do I travel? Right? What are some of the other personal things, right? Those are the kind of things that I've always been, people will be looking at. And now here you are, you consciously made a decision that, hey, I don't want to wait until I retire. I want to actually plunge into this social entrepreneurship where everything that I've got, I have to see how I can help the rest of the society who, for whatever reason, they have not benefited from it. I mean, that is an incredible transition that you have made. And having made that transition, and now having seen both the capitalistic world as well as the social aspect of the world, what have been some of your learning, especially given this picture that I believe is a very important aspect of building the sustainable aspect of the social entrepreneurship, right, into a business, not from the point of view of actually making money, but from the point of view of providing a very sustainable and creating a much bigger impact to the society?
Yeah, okay. So let me answer this from the perspective of what we define as our business. So if someone asks us what is the business that Mrida is in, we say that we are in the business of development, right? So that is as I mentioned initially, development need not be philanthropy or donation or grant. You can actually combine the elements of philanthropy, donation, or grant with the elements of business and create a social enterprise or an organization where we don't really say that our objective is to first generate the profits and then deploy some of the profits into the social sector or the development sector. Our objective was, how can we actually build a business where this thing is ingrained into the business model itself, right? So that's how this whole idea of the business of development came about. And in this, there are a couple of things that we've said that, one is the holistic approach to development. Something that we've learned as we go along, it was a thought process that existed in my mind earlier. In the corporate world, you've got different functional areas. You've got a finance function, you've got a marketing function, you've got a production planning function, etc. Now, you've got all these functions which operate independently in their own respective areas. But then at the top, you have a CEO, or who takes a holistic approach of everything and whose objective is to optimize the system, so that it delivers better results. Now, similarly, in the development sector, something that we've learned is that development needs to be really holistic in nature. And now let me give you an example. Let's say, for instance, we talk about skill development, right? Now, one can actually develop a certain skill, but we've said that when you develop a certain skill, you're actually opening up that person's mind. So if you're working with, let's say, a young lady or women in a rural area, and you're giving them a certain skill, let's say, skilling them in, let's say, something very simple like stitching. Now, you've opened up their skill set, you've opened up their mind on the possibility of stitching being used as, a livelihood opportunity. But if you just leave it at that, it can actually become frustrating, because this lady now knows that she has a certain skill set, but she doesn't know how to actually utilize it. Right? So you've got to actually move, once you've developed a certain skill, you've got to help that person to either engage in a livelihood opportunity, or more ideally, according to us, you've got to encourage that person to become an entrepreneur. So you've got to move from the skill development into an entrepreneurship mode. Now, once you've taken somebody on that journey to become an entrepreneur, now that entrepreneur has to develop a certain product, in line with that diagram that you showed. Now, you've got to develop a certain product. You've got to develop a certain product which meets a certain customer requirement to a certain quality specification, etc. So you've got to handhold that entrepreneur in order to be able to understand a customer's requirement and develop a product that meets the customer requirement. Now, once you moved into that aspect of the development process, and you have this lady who's developed, it could be a palazzo, it could be a baby suit, it could be, it could be a bag, it could be a face mask in today's context. Now, that person needs to have a market linkage. That person needs to be able to access a certain market and be able to sell his or her product. Now, you've got to be able to handhold that person in the market development as well. So it's only when you move through the entire value chain, from skill development to livelihood to entrepreneurship to creating a product to creating a market linkage, that's when you're able to complete the entire loop. And that's where you're able to facilitate not only sustainability of a certain process, but you're able to facilitate also scalability. And that's what we call as the holistic approach to development, right? So that's one of the fundamental things that we're trying to promote through whatever we're doing in Mrida. That's the holistic approach to development. Now, the other point that we've learned is that nothing should be given free. Something that we've seen, even if we are working absolutely at the bottom of the pyramid, we're working with the poorest of the poor, they have a certain sense of dignity. They have a certain sense of value for themselves, right? So there is nothing that needs to be given to them for free. There has to be in what we call in our terms as skin in the game. So we've seen that the moment we approach somebody in a village, and we say that, look, we are here to help you to move up the value chain. We'll take you through the entire process and help you uplift yourself and come up in life. But you've got to invest something. Now, if you invest a certain amount of money, invest in your efforts, etc., we will bring the rest of the entire package for you. We will build on our experience in the corporate world, help you to uplift yourself, and take you on this path through development, right? So that's how we combine a certain element of philanthropy or donation or grant. We combine that with the principles of business to come up with a solution which is sustainable and which is scalable.
Yeah, very nice. So I guess the point you're trying to say is this holistic approach, which is typically what in a corporate world the CEO is sort of driving, right? Starting from conceiving the idea to product development to product market fit, and then driving the sales and driving revenues and driving profitability. And you as a link to these micro services entrepreneurs, whether it is tailoring or any of these things that these people that you are empowering them to get into, you sort of tie all of these things together to bring the holistic approach, right?
Absolutely. So in some ways, you could say that we are systems integrators. So Yeah.
Correct.
So, once we get into a certain village, we do a baseline study, we understand what the needs of the village are, and then we try and bring in that holistic approach. So whether it's, working with women on women's empowerment or livelihoods, whether it's working with small and marginal farmers, whether it's working with rural artisans, etc., we try and engage with them. We try and take them onto this entire path to development. And again, leveraging our experience in the corporate world, we try and become systems integrators because, as Mrida, we may not be experts in everything. I mean, we certainly are not experts in stitching and livelihoods and, agriculture and everything. We have our certain areas of core competence, but we like to look at ourselves as system integrators. We create a platform for these people. We bring in expertise from various, angles. We bring in the partnerships and the synergies. And we create a platform which will enable them to, come up in life.
Fantastic. So one of the things that you and I have always sort of talked about and debated has always been this issue that I believed that when you create this rural entrepreneurship and also the work that you're doing with the farmers to help uplift, these farmers from efficient farming and efficient agriculture part of the things, right, that you're doing. So what it does is it actually generates higher income to these families. And I've always said that the higher income is what is going to make these families to feel a lot more comfortable being in the village rather than them migrating into the big cities. And moving to big cities, it's always like a lose-lose-lose situation, right? Because a lot of these people move in for labor class kind of work. They cannot afford to pay for the rent. They cannot afford to live in big cities, so they'll end up living in slums and things like that, which is very detrimental to everybody. So do you still believe that that is actually one of the biggest value propositions, or do you believe that there is much more than that?
Well, absolutely. The whole idea, again, if one looks at the example that you mentioned, if we look at farmers, because one of our core value propositions at Mrida is working with small and marginal farmers, because like I said, if we look at holistic rural development and, given the agrarian nature of the economy in rural areas, we cannot really holistically develop villages unless and until we work with the farmers. So again, our objective is to work with the farmers and not only encourage them to cultivate something that they're doing, but also get involved in the processing and the value addition of their, of their produce. So let's say, for instance, when we started working with small and marginal farmers in Uttarakhand, to work on these healthy ancient grains like millets and amaranth, we encouraged the farmers to cultivate millets and amaranth. Then we encouraged the women in that village to get involved in some degree of value addition or processing. So say, for instance, if you just do the simple activity of grading of the grains before it is, sent to the mandis or sold to the consumers, the simple act of grading of the grains is something that will add value, which will provide, increased livelihood opportunities, not only to the farmers, but to the women in that village. Right? Then in some cases, we've encouraged the women in that village to actually convert that grain into flour. So not only is the farmer earning some revenue by virtue of the cultivation, but the women in that village are earning money by way of converting it, by grading the grain, or by converting it into flour. So we're getting them involved at different stages of the value chain. Similarly, you mentioned about, in Manipur. So in Manipur, we started working with the farmers on cultivation of turmeric. And turmeric is a product which is extremely popular in these days, given the health properties of turmeric. Now, let me give you a very simple example. If you just take the turmeric that gets cultivated from the soil, that has a value of something like 26 to 30 rupees a kilo. So that's less than $0.50 per kilogram. Right? Now, turmeric is at least about 60 to 65% is moisture, right? Now, what happens is that if you, get involved, if you not only encourage the farmers to cultivate turmeric, but you encourage the women in that village to actually, boil and dry and clean the turmeric, that increases its value almost twofold, or in fact 2.5 times that, right?
Wow.
That's something that happens. Now, if you look at these, rural areas, you look at the, hilly areas of Manipur, water is not an issue because they have torrential rains over there, right? Firewood is not an issue because it's a highly forested area. So there is no issue of raw material, or there is no cost of raw material, right? The women are not completely productively employed. So, using their existing resources, they're able to get involved in a value addition activity that is converting, the turmeric that comes from the soil into boiled, dried, and clean turmeric. As a result of which the value of the turmeric goes up more than 2 times. So the farmers earning money, the women in that village are earning money. And now if you see that when we are shipping that turmeric all the way from Manipur to, let's say, Gujarat, where we process it, or to Delhi or anywhere in the hinterland, right? Now you imagine that instead of, 1 ton of the regular turmeric, you're actually transporting only about 300 to 350 kg of the dried turmeric. So you're saving significantly on your supply chain and logistics cost. Now, here is a situation where you've done some very, very simple activities, right? And you've ensured value addition across the value chain, whether it was for the farmer or whether it was for the women in that village, or ultimately for us as consumers. So these are just some of the examples how we try and engage, with these kind of value addition and processing activities along the value chain.
Wow, brilliant, brilliant. So one of the things you sort of briefly touched upon, this millet aspect of it. In fact, if I recall, the cold email that you sent me 4 years ago during one of these weekends, and that I responded back, which resulted in that coffee meeting, and resulted in the fact that we are here today. I was always fascinated with this millet because I had actually watched a research documentary from United Nations where they talked about how the consumption of rice, which had increased significantly, and growing of rice requires tremendous amount of water. And UN was really looking at how did the ancient people, what did they cultivate in their respective regions? So they sent a bunch of these research people to South America, and that is how these research people figured out that South America is where they grow this quinoa, which is more nutritious than the rice, and it also consumes a lot less water. And then they sent a bunch of people into India as well. And then in India is where they figured out that people grow these millets. And this is something that you have been focusing right from day one. And you have also created even finished products on millets as well. So you believe that growing millet dramatically reduces the consumption of water, and in fact that could be one of the propositions that we should be doing to many of our farmers, especially in northern Karnataka, Maharashtra area, and this Hyderabad dry area, right, which is where there is a big crisis for water. And this is where a lot of the work that OVBI has been doing to rejuvenate the water. So just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. So millets is, firstly, it's an ancient grain which has somehow been forgotten, and which is something that needs to be revived. It's it's a healthy grain, which is something that is extremely nutritious. It has a lower water footprint, so that's something which is environment friendly. Also gives us an opportunity to synergize with the kind of work that OVBI is doing. And what we've tried to do, again, this entire example of millets, amaranth, and the brand Earthspire that Mrida has come up with, actually epitomizes everything that we've been talking about in terms of combining the rigor and the financial discipline of the corporate world into the development sector. So here is a situation where we've worked with a large number of small and marginal farmers, farmer collectives in Uttarakhand, in other parts of India. Encourage them to get into the cultivation. We provide them with better than market value for whatever grains they produce. As I mentioned earlier, we get the women in that village involved with processing and value addition, whether it's gradation, etc. So they have an earning opportunity. What we've tried to do is span the entire value chain from farm to fork. So we have a nutritionist who's a very senior member of our team. So with her help and with the help of her team, we've created this range of healthy millet and amaranth-based multigrain flours. So we have a gluten-free high protein. We have a diabetic-friendly, special unrefined multigrain flour. So we've got a range of 6 different flours, nicely packaged, which we market through Amazon, Big Basket, and other, online platforms. And so here, what we're doing is we're providing a healthy product to the end consumer. We're able to run a business for ourselves in the process. And the whole objective of this business is to provide sustainable livelihood opportunities to small and marginal farmers and people in the village. And not only are we providing this entire range of opportunities, but as you very rightly mentioned, we are coming up with a product which is more sustainable, which is more environment friendly. Millets are hardy crops, so they need less maintenance. They need less use of they're pest resistant, so they need less chemical fertilizers, etc. So, you're actually creating an entire win-win situation across the value chain. So like we've got a range of multigrain flours. We moved further up the value chain. We've got a range of healthy millet and amaranth-based gluten-free cookies. We've got a range of, ready-to-eat amaranth-based snacks. And we've got a range of ready-to-cook products like millet-based upma and khichdi. Again, the principle is the same, that you're providing healthy products to the end consumer, running a business for yourself in the process. Through that business, you're able to empower, people at the bottom of the pyramid in rural India. In fact, in this case, the interesting part is that the final processing and the packaging of the flours and, some of the other products are done through an NGO based in Delhi, which is working with women from urban slums. So even at the final end of the value chain, we are using this as an opportunity to empower people at the bottom of the pyramid.
I wish every corporate actually starts using the millet-based cookies and various other products that amaranth-based products that you're creating, instead of employees using eating junk food. This could be healthy, and it's also helping create jobs, and it's a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely. Another thing that we also have, like we've got this Earth-fired range, which is a B2C or a consumer product. We have a good manufacturing practice and an ISO certified processing facility in the state of Gujarat, in a place called Umbergaon, where we make herbal extracts. And so like we've got these B2C products, which is the Earth-fired range. We work with tribals and with small and marginal farmers on cultivation and collection of products like aloe vera, amla, ashwagandha, noni, giloy, etc., which are all basically healthy herbal products and becoming increasingly popular these days, because they are immunity boosters. Now, these are products that we, process and supply to large B2B customers. So if you buy an aloe vera capsule, for instance, the extract of aloe vera that goes into that capsule is something that Mrida makes. Now, again, the principle is the same. We supply a sustainably sourced quality product to an to a B2B customer. We're able to run a business for ourselves in the process, but the whole objective of that business is to provide a sustainable livelihood opportunity to a tribal or a small and marginal farmer in remote rural India.
Excellent. I want to invite my colleague Manu. He also had a few questions. Maybe there are some questions online as well.
Yeah, no, I was jumping in anyway because of the cookie comment, right? I think now if we have chocolate also, cocoa or chocolate also sourced like this, we have some give. No, so the question I have goes back to one of the comments you made earlier about skin in the game, right? That's one of the things that I am extremely passionate about, thinking about how do we empower the farmers or the villagers to do that work themselves, as opposed to, right? You mentioned this, the handouts don't help. It's about dignity. The people, even though they're the bottommost rung of the pyramid, they feel that they want to do some things themselves. So are there more examples of how that has worked, or maybe some that you felt that may not have worked as well when you try to just give money or do stuff for them?
By and large, I would say that our experience has been very positive. In fact, our experience has been that absolutely at the bottom of the pyramid, people's propensity to pay back a certain loan that they've taken is extremely high, because, as I mentioned, they do have that sense of dignity. And I can give you multiple examples of, let's say, ladies who've started learning how to stitch, and who entirely traversed that entire value chain from being somebody who would be sitting in the house with a veil behind her, that ghungat that they wear in India, and who would be ready to talk to you only if you have a male member of the family present, to a situation where this lady has become an entrepreneur, set up a stitching center, and doesn't, the veils have come off, and she doesn't think twice before, getting onto a video call, calling up my colleagues and saying that, hey, I've got these products, you need to help me with market linkages. So we've been through that. We've been through this, there's this extremely passionate lady in Jharkhand, that video that you saw. She started making agarbattis, or the incense sticks.
Yeah.
Right. And in the space of a year and a half, she has moved from a small scale setup in her house, where she was making these incense sticks by hand, and her husband would take a cycle and go around in the village and sell those incense sticks, to a stage where she's now thinking of investing in an automatic machine. She's already employed 2 women in that village, and she's moved entirely up the value chain. So you've got that example. I've given you examples of farmers in Manipur, and I won't get into details over there, but they've moved over from a completely unsustainable form of agriculture into something which is far more sustainable, water friendly, etc. And they've actually been able to move that entire thing. This is something that I'm doing, with a classmate of mine who's actually working in those villages with the farmers. So we've got so many of these examples, and like I said, in all of these, we follow that same principle. We are here to help you. We're here to arrange finance for you, right? But that finance is not going to come to you as a grant. It's going to come to you as a loan. You've got to be able to build the capacity to earn money for yourself, repay the loan. That loan we will pass on to another, farmer, or to another lady.
Pay it forward.
So chain can go on. So we've had a number of these examples. Now, I must admit that, all of this doesn't happen as smoothly as I'm probably sharing with you. We do have our, setbacks, we do have our failures, etc. And ironically, some of these things do come about because when we try and talk about this whole concept of skin in the game, there are a lot of freebies which are being, given to these people. So very often we do face that resistance, saying, hey, listen, I mean, you are asking us to put in some money, but, we're getting a lot of these things for free anyway. So our simple answer to that is, look, this is the way we work. And, and we're ready to work with you as long as you have that skin in the game. If you have an opportunity to get something free, I mean, by all means, go ahead and take that opportunity. But from our side, this is the way we will work. So we've had our setbacks, we've had our resistances, etc. But I would say, by and large, I think we've moved on the path, and we continue to move on the path that we've set for ourselves.
No, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So let me take one of the questions that Sridhar has just put out there, and you can see that on the screen. It's very interesting when he how the produce that you mentioned, maybe in Manipur, how they're cleaned and dried. Do they do that naturally, or do they have machines to do them, to make these value-added products? And also,
Sorry.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, as of now, what we're doing is doing it naturally, without any machines, etc. Some of these villages are so remote. I mean, even getting to these villages is, a huge task in itself. I mean, that can be the subject of another discussion that we have. But the other thing that we see is that, given the nature of the lay of the land over there, it's difficult to work with machinery, etc. At least in the initial stages. So we come up with simple solutions that they can actually execute using naturally natural resources that they already have available with them. And that's what we're doing at this stage. I think the question also led to, also asked about government schemes, etc. So I think we're taking a step-by-step approach to this. Our first step is to make sure that using natural resources, using the skill sets of the people themselves, how can we actually bring things up to a certain level? How can we actually showcase this whole concept of sustainability and scalability using minimal resources? Once we've been able to showcase that, then we try and reach out to government agencies, etc., and say that, look, this is a basic model in place. It is something that is sustainable. Can you now step in, and can you help us to scale it to the next level? And again, we've had examples, for instance, in this village in Manipur, along with, a classmate of mine who's been working there for the last couple of years. We started this process. We brought it up to a certain level. The deputy commissioner of that particular district noticed it. He got interested, and now he's trying to kind of provide us with the kind of government infrastructure and government resources so that we could take that to the next level. We haven't completely got there, but I think we've kind of moved one step towards that in that direction.
No, that's wonderful. One of the things that OVBI also does, we partner with many government agencies, like the work we're doing in Karnataka. We put a little bit of the funds. We try to get funds from the government. So that linkage, that partnership is also important. And I know that from your perspective, you do also do that same kind of partnership with a lot of CSRs, right? CSR funding from companies as well, right? So that's a great model. There's the CSR side of it, there's the government side of it. And is that how you're looking at scaling? Because when I see the stuff that you do, it's just incredibly important. And and she said, right, you're not the experts in any of these things. So every village might have different requirements. Like the people in Uttar Pradesh might not be the people who are doing turmeric, and the people in Manipur might be doing turmeric. So how do you scale when the requirements for these villages are diverse, and you still want to be able to scale?
So that's a very relevant point, Manu, and I'll answer it from two perspectives. One is, you spoke about the overall model that Mrida has. So we have a Section 8 company or a not-for-profit called the Mrida Heart and Soil Foundation, which accesses the philanthropic capital or the CSR capital. Now that's capital that we deploy in rural areas in the form of, you could call it some kind of seed funding. Where we use that in order to promote these examples of entrepreneurship, whether it's a stitching center or whether it's a small and marginal farmer cultivating millets, or whether it's the farmer in Manipur growing turmeric or moving to a sustainable form of agriculture. So that's where we deploy, as seed capital, the CSR or the philanthropic capital. Now, once they actually move up the value chain, they come up with a product for which they need market linkages. Those market linkages are provided either through the B2C or the B2B business that we have through a company called the Mrida Greens and Development Private Limited, right? So this whole thing works, in tandem with each other. So you're actually combining the good part of the philanthropic capital with, the rigor and the financial discipline of the corporate world to create this ecosystem. Now, what we've tried to do so far over the last 5 years is we've established proof of concept, like you said. I mean, we're working in 9 different states. So we've been able to establish this concept of what we call as the business of development. We've been able to showcase. And I'm not getting into the financials as of now, but we are now also financially self-sufficient as an organization. So we are now, generating our own independent cash flows. We have our struggles. Overall, we've been able to show that not only have we been able to demonstrate the business of development, by working in 9 different states, we've been able to showcase our ability to scale it up to the next level. Now what we're trying to say, and since we are now financially self-sufficient as well, we're trying to use this as a pitch, to try and get government support to scale. And we're also now in the process of pitching to private equity or venture capital, investors, so that we can get further capital into the company and scale it up to the next level. I also saw another question that popped up on the screen as to whether the kind of products that we're taking is how can we take that globally. That was Anu Jagdish. Yeah, and one of our plans is once we have the capital to be able to deploy, because brand building is expensive business, whether it's in India or in overseas. But once we are able to get capital, access to further capital, which we're quite confident of being able to do over the next probably 6 to 8 months, I think that's what we will do. We will expand not only in India, but also progressively overseas as well.
That's excellent. This is a question again from Rajita. The idea was they're excited. The products are very high quality, right? And having consumed them, they say that it's extremely high quality and it requires local partnerships. But how do you manage to ensure the quality of your product? I guess consistency over a period of time.
Yeah. So firstly, I'm delighted that somebody who's attending this program is also a consumer of products, and that's something which is very interesting. I hope some prospective funders are also listening into this. But yes, that's very right, because we're trying to source from small and marginal farmers. We're trying to source from different parts of the country. So, maintaining quality is something which is very, very important. So we've got this nutritionist and food technologist who's, at the core of the entire efforts that we have. So, quality is literally an obsession with us. Our processing facility in Gujarat is now approved by the Department of Scientific and Industrial Regulation. So that's something that we have a DSIR approval, which gets us, which establishes our credibility from a quality point of view. And the other thing that we're trying to do is also encourage the farmers with whom we're working to not work with us as individual farmers, but as farmer collectives and progressively as farmer organizations, so that they build in their quality systems and processes right at the source itself. That gives two advantages. One is that it gives them an opportunity to learn, it gives them an opportunity to develop themselves, and also gives them an opportunity to improve the value of their produce. Yeah. So these are some of the things that we're doing. So there is a quality orientation at the manufacturing base, whether it's in Delhi or in Gujarat. We're trying to make sure that the quality is taken care of at the source, through the farmer collectives and the farmer producer organization, so that we build in those quality components, at every level of the value chain.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'd like to, bring back BVG and see if BVG has any questions or anything.
Yeah, thank you. So that's been really fantastic conversation. So, the whole world is hit with this unfortunate thing, right? The COVID. And for some people, the COVID has turned into a very positive thing. And for some people, it has been very disastrous. I'm just curious to understand how it has impacted Mrida and your whole ecosystem, which includes the farmers, the social entrepreneurs that you have created, and various other touch points that you have in your ecosystem. So I'm just curious to understand.
I'm delighted to share, at least as things stand today. I think we've been doing fairly well for ourselves in the current year. In fact, we're growing at about 30 to 35% as compared to previous year, which is something which is really positive, but which I would say the credit doesn't really go to us, maybe to some extent to us, but also to the resilience of people that we've seen in the villages and at the operating level. So say, for instance, we've had this beautiful experience where, the women in the stitching center in Bareilly, which Jagdish, you've also had an opportunity to visit, in the thick of the lockdown, we managed to get some interns who came in from the Institute of Home Economics, which is an educational institution in Delhi. They work in the textile department. Now, these interns who came in the middle of the lockdown, through video calls and through Zoom calls, etc., they were able to actually teach the women in these stitching center in Bareilly on how to make face masks. So this stitching center in Bareilly is now making 3-layer face masks which meet up to WHO specifications, etc. So we've nicely kind of packaged this, put in a small story behind it, and that's something that is being sold to customers. Right. So that's an example of the kind of resilience that you have, not only something that we've done, but the kind of resilience that people in the remotest areas have shown. Similarly, we continue to get, farmers who are working, whether it's in Manipur or in Uttarakhand, to be able to provide us not only with, the millets and the amaranth. That business is something, these days people are going in for healthy food products. I mean, that's something which is gaining increasing importance, anything which is an immunity booster. So these products actually have a bigger demand. So not only are we supplying in our own brand name, but we're also trying to reach out to private label manufacturers so that we can do, we can get into bulk sourcing deals with them. Similarly, as far as our herbal extracts business is concerned, because again, these are immunity boosting products like aloe vera, giloy, noni, shatavari, etc., etc. So those businesses have also seen, an upturn. So far, I think, like I said, we've been fortunate enough to be able to grow our business for about 30 to 35% as compared to the last year. I mean, we've got a great team of people, both at the leadership levels as well as at the operating levels, who are kind of stepping up to the plate and making it happen. Like I said, we've seen a tremendous amount of resilience, at the base of the pyramid. Those are our core customers. So I think so far we are on a positive wicket. I think the only challenge that we're facing today is, working capital and, how do we fund that growth? But then again, as I say, that's a positive challenge to happen. Rather than have a situation where I don't have business, we have a situation where we have the business. We're looking at how to fund that.
Wonderful. So one of the questions that we at OVBI have with you, given the fact that you've been doing such incredible work, is in fact Mohan Trika, who is the chairman of OVBI, also is asking me to ask you the same question, which I've been thinking as well. How can Mrida and all the work that you've been doing, of course, it's primarily in the north at this point of time, and OVBI, which is working towards elimination of poverty in regions that are badly impacted, right, because of drought situations and lack of rains and lack of ability to store the water and so on and so forth. How can we collaborate and how can we work together? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think, one of the things, as you mentioned, so did Manu, and I've also said that, I mean, we're not experts in everything that we do. Water is an area where we really don't have much expertise. Of course, we are working in areas like rainwater harvesting, etc., and, recycling, etc., but that's in a very, very limited manner. So that's an area where OVBI has huge strengths. So that's something that where we can really collaborate. OVBI, on the other hand, is working primarily in water. They probably may not have the same kind of experience and skill sets in areas like skill development, livelihood, women's empowerment, agriculture, etc. So that's an area where we can bring some value to the table. Similarly, as you mentioned, Jagdish, we've been present primarily in the north and in the east and in the central part, whereas OVBI has a lot of presence probably in the west and in the south. So there is an opportunity to kind of synergize our efforts, not only geographically, but also in our respective core areas of competence. And I would personally definitely welcome, I'd love to kind of discuss this further between our team and the OVBI team to see how we could collaborate, synergize, add value to each other moving forward.
I think, immediately what I can see is like how you sort of educated these farmers with smart farming, right? Which is where the rice and the sugarcane that are grown in many of these regions, how with some simple adjustments, you can pretty much double the capacity of the agricultural growth, right? And on top of it, heavily drought hit areas, how can we actually bring this millet sort of a growth, right?
Yeah.
Because that consumes a lot less water. So the combination of efficiency in agriculture, which increases the income, and then perhaps maybe some parts of the land could be used for millet growth. I think that could be an area where you could perhaps maybe help us to get educated, and then we can take you to various farmers, right, that we are working with in these regions. And that may be a good start for us to start collaborating. And then you can bring the other holistic aspect into these villages.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot that we have to learn from OVBI, and hopefully we should be able to add some value as well. But I'll just take a minute. You kind of triggered off one very important point, Jagdish, when you mentioned about the kind of, when you mentioned about sugarcane, etc. Our experience has been that typically to begin with, you need very, very small interventions in order to able to start this development process. In fact, in Mrida, we have this saying where we say think small. We're not saying think big, we say think small, because ultimately it's the small little actions that can actually have a transformative impact. It's the small little actions that can actually transform people's lives. So we say think small, be a transformer. So just like a transformer takes a small voltage and amplifies it into something much bigger, it's the small little actions that we take. It could be a 2.5 watt LED bulb, which suddenly brings light to a village which has never seen electricity in the past. It could be a simple activity like grading of seeds, which will help improve the productivity. Or it could be, just synergizing the efforts of an organization like OVBI with an organization like Mrida, and making sure that we, synergize and add value to each other to the benefit of people at the bottom of the pyramid.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I think we are almost out of time. Any final thoughts, Arun?
Well, I can only say that it was such a pleasure to interact with you and with Manu and the other members of the team. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I feel humbled, just as I always feel humbled, working in the rural areas with, the people that we have the pleasure of working with. I did see a lot of questions which, popped up on the screen, which one has not been able to answer, probably for lack of time. But happy to engage with anyone later on over email or over a call, etc., and see how best we could take it further. But thank you very much once again for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking it.
No, thank you so much, Arun. This was so wonderful. To hear everything that you just said, and how social entrepreneurship can have such a massive impact. I love what you said about think small. I would love to talk to you a little bit more about some of those things as well.
Sure, we can have a small conversation around.
And to our viewers who listen to this, absolutely, would love that. To our viewers, we hope this session has been as insightful and informative for you as it was for us. This was fantastic. The OVBI Water Team will continue to bring these conversations with experts, entrepreneurs, partners, and on-the-field execution leaders. We will have more of these insightful sessions every Sunday at 9 a.m. Pacific time till the end of the year. And you can see the lineup of topics and speakers by visiting us at eliminatingwaterpoverty.org/live series. Many experts believe we have less than a decade to address this water challenge in India. So we need all the help we can get. We would love for each one of you to participate in whatever way you can. Please pass on this information and educate others, volunteer with us, or donate in whatever capacity so that we can continue this work. Your $1,500 can provide water security for an entire village for their lifetime for about 2,000 people. Each collection of water drops, creates an ocean. So any contribution from you will help us in eliminating water poverty for India. Please visit us at eliminatingwaterpoverty.org to find out more, and we look forward to seeing you at our next seminar session next Sunday. Thank you so much. Namaste.